Ready or not, the program will begin now. You don't have to be totally quiet, but a modicum, if you just bring it down a little bit, that'd be great. My name is Mark Edmiston. I'm the chairman of City Limits. I've been working with City Limits now for about 8 years, and it's gone through a transformation that has really given it a real meaning in the city of New York. Every one of the programs that we go after are done by no one else. And this is really the thought behind City Limits, is that as the media world changes and shrinks, the traditional media are no longer able financially to report on things that mean a lot to the people of New York. And that's the job of City Limits. So I want to welcome you all to this event. I want to thank you for your support. It means a lot to all of us. And I now want to introduce the editor-in-chief and the CEO of City Limits, Jarrett Murphy.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks to everybody for coming. Just a quick programming note. I realize that the name of my speech in the program is City Limits, the first 4 decades. I realize that might sound a little dense, a little intimidating. I promise that my remarks won't take more than 2 or 3 hours, and there'll be time for questions at the end, so I'll be as brief as I can. But on behalf of the staff of City Limits, all of our talented contributors, and all the people whose skill and sacrifice has made this evening possible, I want to welcome you. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. So many people here, I haven't really had a chance to see the entire crowd. I want to make a special note of public officials who took time out of their busy schedule. They obviously have a lot of competing demands to spend time with us tonight. Assemblyman Jim Brennan, State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli is hoping to stop by. Has someone filling in. He's at the debate. Council members Donovan Richards and Julissa Flores-Copeland, and former officials are here as well. Fernando Ferrer, the Bronx Borough President. Former Comptroller Alan Hevesy has also supported the event, and former Governor Eliot Spitzer. If you are a public official who I have not named, that entitles you to one positive news story in City Limits over the next 6 months. So just, if you leave your business card at the door, we'll let you claim your prize. I'm especially grateful to Wayne and Henry for letting us honor them tonight. We picked them for a lot of reasons, but chiefly because we admire them. And it's said that you admire people because you recognize something in them that you think you have, or you hope you have, or you would like to possess, some trait. And I'll admit that that is true tonight of our honorees and of City Limits. The courage of one's convictions, dedication to doing the kind of grunt work that it takes to do good, a commitment to the city, a deep belief in democracy, and a willingness, or some might even say a thirst, for making the right kind of enemies. Those are among the qualities that we celebrate in our honorees tonight, and they're among the traits that City Limits has tried to exhibit during its 4 decades of existence. Now, there are people in the room who remember better than I what the city was like in 1976 when this publication began. It was an emergency, obviously, that was more than simply fiscal in nature. The president told us to drop dead, not in so many words. A city official talked about planned shrinkage, and institutions like banks and the Rand Corporation and suburbanites gave up on a lot of neighborhoods. But people living there did not. They gathered together and were joined by allies who'd rallied to their cause to fight for their part of the city. And it was a fight for survival, and it was that fight that City Limits was founded to cover. Not just to cover, but to take part in, to use the power of media to discover, to inform, to expose, and to embarrass, in a hope that we might tilt ever so slightly the balance of power in the city toward the Bushwicks and Hunts Points and Ravenwood houses of the world. And that's exactly what we've done over 40 years, and that's what we're celebrating this evening. Even after, thank you, cue applause. Even after the gravest crisis passed for the city, obviously a lot of these neighborhoods faced new, novel threats in the 80s, 90s, and this century, AIDS and homelessness, overzealous policing and environmental injustice, climate change, gentrification. And City Limits has been here to cover all of those. Other newsrooms often picked up those stories, and we're very glad that they did. They did excellent work on them, but they were always the top story for us. And the reason is because we think they're the most important stories, and because the people who lived them inspired us constantly with their humor and their courage, and frankly, their willingness to win. City Limits does not exist to chronicle tragedy. We're here to tell the tale of and be part of the quest to overcome these challenges. And that's often a story we've been able to tell, whether it's about a HUD program that was ripping off taxpayers, or a bail system that was destroying lives, whether it's about foster care or the school system, or about Johnny Hikampier, a guy who spent 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit and City Limits helped to exonerate. We've had an impact on more than our own keyboards in the past 40 years. We've had an impact on the city, and I'm very, very proud of that. That kind of journalism doesn't come easy, and so I want to take a personal moment to thank the men and women who did the amazing job of turning what was really one of the first nonprofit media companies in the country into a powerful voice in city affairs. Talented people who could have made more money and gotten more fame and maybe even had more fun working somewhere else instead wrote, edited, took pictures, did the books, did layout, design, everything it took to make City Limits possible. And that includes institutions, UHAB and ANHD and Pratt, who helped to found us, and foundations who, too many to name lest I forget one and never get a grant from them again, who took a chance on independent media, not always an easy thing to fund. It's been an honor for the past 10 years to be the custodian of that legacy, and many of the people who are part of that are here tonight. I want to recognize them. They include Tracy McMillan, Jill Grossman, Doug Turetsky, Ron Schiffman, Andrew White, Tom Robbins, Karen Lowe, Alyssa Katz, Mark Anthony Thomas, Jennifer Gutman, Kim Nauer, Cassie Feldman, Ruth Ford, Kate Pastor, Eileen Markey. This party is for Wayne and Henry, but the open bar is for you. We appreciate all you've done for us over the years. I can't say thank you enough. Now, I realize that standing here in a freshly dry-cleaned suit, the role of a City Limits editor can seem very glamorous, which it is sometimes. But it can also be very lonely when you start out to do a story that hasn't exactly galvanized the rest of the city yet. And so a real kinship is formed when you find somebody who cares almost as much as you, maybe even more so, about an incredibly obscure issue. And so more than 10 years ago, when I set out to do some reporting about outsourcing in the city, I found a young DC-37 official named Henry Garrido, who had put together some very good white papers on the impact of privatization on New York. It wasn't unusual to find a union official who didn't like outsourcing. It was unusual to find anybody who had done really good research, and that was Henry. And so the brotherhood that's formed over big documents and spreadsheets, it lasts forever. And so I'll be very glad that in a few moments, Henry will be the inaugural winner of our Civic Champion Award. I'm also very happy to have a distinguished New Yorker to introduce him, and that is Councilwoman Jalissa Ferreras Copeland. She is one of the most authoritative voices in the City Council. She's the child of immigrants. In 2009, get this, she was the first Latina elected to any public office from Queens. And she is now the first woman of color to chair the Finance Committee. She is also the co-chair of the Council's increasingly important Progressive Caucus, and so it's with great pressure that I welcome the Councilwoman to the stage tonight.
So 40 years ago, I was born. On Election Day, November 2nd, 1976, Jimmy Carter was elected president, and this wonderful publication was also born, and I didn't need these glasses. So thank you, Jarrett and Mark, and congratulations to the City Limits Board and all of your staff for 40 years of providing the city with social justice journalism. Your work is critical to policymakers, and it provides something that's very different and new and very, very needed, and that is your investigative reporting, but also a perspective that often isn't heard and that elected officials could then help galvanize and wrap around policy. I'm honored to join you tonight to celebrate your anniversary and present this award to one of the most influential social activists and labor leaders in New York City. Henry Garrido is not only a friend, let's give him a round of applause. Henry is the friend and advisor that we all need. He is an amazing leader, but one thing that he also does is that he carries a pin to burst your bubble whenever your head is getting too big. So that is exactly who we need. We need someone who has a real voice, who is grounded. My mother is a retiree from DC 37, and I'd like to think that the stability and the fact that I'm standing here before you as a young girl from Corona, I'm still young, not 40 yet, as a young girl from Corona, a woman of color, to be able to influence now policy and our city's budget is really a product of what the labor movement was able to do for my family. So I thank you, Henry. Henry's perspective on the fight for 15 and things that aren't necessarily associated directly to his union, he understands that it may not affect his members directly, but anything that affects New Yorkers affects us all. So he represents a union of 120,000 members, and that is no small feat, but also the families that those members are connected are really what New York really, really stands for. So thank you for our municipal workforce. We stand on the shoulders of all of them. Thank you all tonight and wish you great congratulations on your 40th anniversary. Help me to bring up my friend with a pin, Henry Garrido.
Good evening to you, and thank you so very much to my friend, my sister from another mother, Julissa. I cannot tell you the stories we have growing up in Corona and all the work that we did before politics was in our minds and before government was anywhere near the front, the radar, back screen. First of all, I want to thank City Limits for this tremendous honor, and I'm also very pleased and humble to recognize one of the giants and congratulate Mr. Wayne Barrett for the remarkable body of work. I think it's safe that the body of work Wayne did, tried to comfort the afflicted and afflicted those who are comfortable. So we want to thank you for the work. I'm not a wordsmith, but you get the point. So, look, it was quite a long time ago. Jarrett talked about how President Ford told the city to drop dead, and this publication was born a year later. And since then, it has become the champion publication for those who otherwise wouldn't have a voice. Today, I stand with you honor as the representing working people in New York, 125,000 members and about 50,000 retirees and their families, which together represent a total of 387,000 New Yorkers in the city of New York. Now, I'm going to bear a little bit on my script a little bit because today I think is a moment for us to take a moment and pause. Maybe it's because we're here. Maybe it's because I studied architecture that I was in awe when I first walked up and looked at the beautiful buildings around it and beautiful models and all the work that I can imagine went into this city. But if there's one thing I learned 15 years ago, when September 11 took place, that as people were running away from that pit you see over there, city workers was running towards it. They were sacrificing their safety and the lives to protect and defend the people that were in that pit. And we should never forget that 15 years later, many of them are still dying, they're sick, and we should be doing everything we can to protect their lives and to make sure their health is taken care of. I say that with tremendous pride because today a national debate is taking place, and while I had an invite, I think this was a much better event. I have to admit. And you know, with those who think that this debate today, it's about selecting an individual for a Democratic Party or a Republican Party, or a debate around, you know, sort of like school of thought, whether you're conservative or liberal, in between. I think there's a lot more at stake in this election that I have seen since I have been a citizen of this country. And that is, this election will define or come to question the very soul of this country, or whether we have a country that continues to fight for working people. I'm not going to get political, but I will tell you this. I'll tell you this. I was born in a country called the Dominican Republic. I grew up there and I went to high school. And I had an opportunity to go to City College and study architecture and graduate from there, because this country gave me an opportunity and opened its arms, not because there was a wall or a border that prevented me from coming here. And I am extremely proud of the work that I have done, and work that continues to be done by myself and my family. About 3 days ago, I was talking to my brother Bruce, who is in Afghanistan right now. And he is fighting with the troops in the army. And we were talking, and Bruce and I could not be any more different, right? He's a conservative guy. He's actually a registered Republican. I told Mom to disinvite him from the Christmas party, but she wouldn't. And needless to say, there are two things that we do not do, neither Thanksgiving nor Christmas night. One, we do not talk baseball, because he actually likes some of the players. I don't, A-Rod and stuff. And two, we do not talk politics, because, you know, we have vastly different views about the world. And, you know, it's weird that we came from the same family. But the one thing Bruce and I agree, few days ago, 3 days ago, when I was talking to him, which is very rare for me, is that he is as concerned for the future of this country as I am, because the language that has come out of this election has not about unifying a country, has not about lifting or uplifting people or championing ideas, has been about dividing people, and that is a very dangerous proposition. So, as I said, I won't talk about a candidate or the other, but I do think that it is important for a publication like City Limits, that have for many years spoken for those who cannot speak for themselves, the immigrants, the people that are struggling to get fair housing in this city, for institutional corruption, which is one of my favorite subjects that Wayne wrote a lot about, that we take a moment to say that it is really, really important that we empower and talk to people about a set of ideals, not just a set of candidates, so we continue to move this country forward. On behalf of my members who make it possible for me to be here and be at work every day, I thank you, and I am honored for this award.
Thank you very much, Henry. I think this would be an appropriate moment, having just heard from a labor leader, to thank all the people whose work is making this evening possible, especially the folks from David Joseph's Catering who are serving you. Let's give them a hand. And the people from Silverstein Properties have been amazingly gracious during this process, especially Robert Marcucci. Thank you so much for all your help. And especially my amazing staff, Adina, Fran, Fred, and Abigail. Amazing work. So thanks to all of them. What I won't do tonight is thank Wayne Barrett, because I want to know where to begin or end. As a former intern, I am every day a beneficiary of his rather intense but ultimately loving tutelage. He's the only journalism class I ever took. Some would say that shows. And as a former colleague, I stand to this day in admiration of his energy and unwavering moral compass. Another admirer of Wayne's, as you can see from your programs, is the great Gerson Barrero, who is supposed to introduce him. Unfortunately, Gerson had a minor car accident this morning. He wasn't seriously injured. He did say, however, that they gave him some medication, and he was a little worried that it had made him loopy, and he might say something very kind about Wayne. And we both agreed that that was something we wanted to avoid. Gerson does have a suspicious side, and he noted he's known for his biting wit. He thought Wayne might be regretting selecting him to introduce Wayne, and thought the circumstances of the accident on the morning of the event were rather peculiar. He said, and this is a quote, I asked him who the other driver was. He said, it was a crazy-looking white lady that could have been one of Wayne's relatives. So I won't say that Wayne was responsible, but I won't say that I know he wasn't either. Whatever the cause for this change, the silver lining is it gives me a chance to involve in the event someone who has been incredibly important to my life and to Wayne's life and career, and also to the life of City Limits. Tom Robbins was editor of City Limits. Tom Robbins was the editor of City Limits in the early 1980s, a time when this publication really established itself as an independent voice, and you all know the story from there: the Daily News, Village Voice, books, CUNY Grad School, amazing stuff for the Marshall Project. Wherever he's been and whatever he's done, he has always been an unfailingly decent and courageous voice for justice. And so it's a true privilege to introduce my friend, Tom Robbins.
That's longer than I was going to say about this guy. My goodness, thank you, Jarrett. Congratulations, Henry Garrido, through this honor. I got to pay my homage first. I haven't had a chance. 1 second, folks. Let me ask a question. So, how many folks here are former Barrett interns? Okay, wait a minute. How many people here feel like they have been Barrett interns? It never ends. He may look slightly incapacitated to you right now, but I can assure you that the phone message is going to be there tomorrow morning, and you'd better be ready. So, Gerson couldn't make it because of this little accident that he somehow contrived to have before he got here. But I saw his beautiful daughter, Taina, just before I came up, and I asked her, what was his best line? At least you could give me a good line that I could use. And she said, oh, no problem. She says, he was going to mention the fact that just the other day when he was ribbing Wayne about the fact that Wayne is a one-language person and has never really learned to speak much Spanish, and Wayne's response to him was, quote, I am the most proficient English writer since Shakespeare, end quote. He's admitting it. He said it. Now, I have a suspicion he hasn't read a lot of Shakespeare, but that's not what's important. Am I right, Mac? All right. Look, kidding aside, there are some things that you need to know about Wayne Barrett. For starters, he's always been someone who had a passion for politics and has long had a keen eye for good, capable politicians. That's why in 1964, he served as co-chair of the Philadelphia Youth for Barry Goldwater. Thankfully, while in Philly, he met and married the one I call the good Barrett, Fran. Who helped him see things a little straighter and get a better handle on politics and politicians. Within a few years, they were living in Brownsville, helping to expose corrupt politicians who were feasting off one of the city's poorest communities. And that was when Wayne started writing for the Village Voice. And he unleashed a torrent of words and articles that went on for the next 35 years. And I do mean a torrent. There was a lot of stories and a lot of articles. While there, he continued his streak of identifying great politicians, and he co-authored a book with the late, great Jack Newfield called City for Sale, about the scandals of the Koch administration. A great book. The hero of the book was a guy named Rudy Giuliani. And as mayor, after Wayne helped him get elected, the man was a major disappointment to Wayne, as he was to a few other New Yorkers. To set the record straight, Wayne then set out to write not one, but 2 books. Danny Collins, sitting here, suffered with him through the second one about 9/11. But the first one never get Wayne mad or disappointed. He managed to send one of those fabulous Barrett interns up to Sing Sing to discover that Giuliani's father, Harold, had been a mob enforcer back in the 1950s. You know, something that, I mean, that was the end of Giuliani's presidential prospects right there, at the end of that. But there's one guy who never fooled Wayne, and that was in the late 1970s when there was this young developer who showed up from Queens wearing this very strange bouffant hairdo. And this guy was trying to elbow his way into government-subsidized development using the likes of Roy Cohn and as many political fixtures as his father could buy to help him get aboard. Wayne spotted him right away as a con artist. He wrote an entire book about Donald Trump in the 1980s. Donald, in the course of writing the book, when he covered Donald's birthday party at one of his ill-fated casinos, Donald Trump had him arrested. And in one of the great lines in literature, almost as good as Shakespeare, Wayne writes in his book, when he was shackled to the wall in the Atlantic City police station, he realized, I guess Donald's not going to cooperate with my book. Anyway, the book came out, and at that point, Trump was considered a flop, and nobody was interested in him. That is too bad. People, you all should have read the book then, and maybe we wouldn't be suffering through this endless national nightmare that we're enduring now. But these days, every reporter in America has been making this pilgrimage to Fran and Wayne's basement in Windsor Terrace to go through his old files and pulling out as many nuggets as they get. So don't be surprised if later this evening you hear Lester Holt quoting from the newly reissued version of that book, Trump, the Greatest Show on Earth, by Wayne Barrett. Oh, yes. In between writing about Rudy and the Donald and a host of other scoundrels, Wayne Barrett turned in some of the greatest investigative reporting about New York since Jacob Riis and Lincoln Steffens. And it was my pleasure to work with him at the Village Voice.
Resurrected for as long as I can last. I'm gonna play a little Donald tonight. If I shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, all of you would still support me. Thanks, Lion Tommy. I prefer a guy who doesn't quit when his colleague gets fired. I really prefer a guy
was looking for a salary hike, a piece of that guy's former paycheck. Thanks, little Jarrett. And his organization, City Losers. Your organization is so broke, you couldn't even serve any Big Macs and Twinkies. Rudy goes everywhere with me, even to Mexico, despite the rape threats against him. But he wouldn't come here. The group was smart enough to honor me because I am a magnet for big bucks. I am a money tree. Henry, congratulations. Henry thinks he can compete with the money tree tonight, but he's very low energy. One of the job titles he represents is choke artist. Henry, 37 is a very low number. I beat more than that in the Republican primaries. I have to get out of here, start preparing for the debate. I have to get my hand enlargement done. I might need this. Yeah. Could you take this one? I'm going to take off the Trump hat and the Trump persona. I'd like to say a few words of real thanks and a few words about the state of journalism. Thanks, first of all, to Fran, the editor of my life for over 50 years. Thanks to the best story Fran and I ever co-bylined, Mac. Thanks to my departed brother Jack, my tour guide to the tawdry, who dispatched me to cover Kid Trump way back in the 70s. Thanks to my other Voice colleagues, several of whom are here tonight. We thought a deadline meant we had to kill somebody by closing time. Thanks to my army of interns, the soldiers of detail who taught me so much. In other words, you all have accomplished something. And thanks to City Limits, born 4 decades ago to combat the Trump of that day, Roger Starr, a city housing commissioner whose ideology of planned shrinkage landed him on the editorial board of the New York Times, when racial triage was the intellectual fashion of the time. City Limits and the sweat equity and community housing groups it embodied, centered around ANHD, the Association for Neighborhood Housing and Development, defeated shrinkage and sparked the housing revolution of the 80s. Some of those pioneers
who created this voice are here tonight. Ron Schiffman, Tom Robbins. We have had decades of city capital investment in affordable housing. As much as it was once assumed that even this city could not devote capital funds to housing, it is now assumed that we will spend billions. And the housing revolution does not merely correlate with the decline in crime, it caused it. The crime drop is more city limits than CompStat, more NHD than PBA, more a result of fixing broken housing than theories about broken windows. Lastly, a few words about journalism and tonight's debate. As usual, Springsteen got the campaign best in Badlands, which now describes large swaths of America. Poor man wanna be rich, rich man wanna be king, and king ain't satisfied till he rules everything. Newt Gingrich and Kellyanne Conway said today that Trump is the Babe Ruth of debating. Maybe that's what they mean about when America was great before. He's certainly not the Hank Aaron of debating. Since Donald's rise, I've had over 60 journalists, Tom referred to this, visit me in Brooklyn. Many have plumbed the cavern of Trump files in my basement. Almost every major print outlet has come, a dozen TV crews, but few of them have been American. There have been many fine pieces of investigative reporting about Trump, but they have gotten almost no TV airtime, the oxygen of presidential politics. Michael Cruz, for example, did a stunning piece in Politico on 9/11 that revealed that Trump went on a New York TV station that day 15 years ago, and with the bodies still filling our streets, pointed out that his building, 40 Worth Street, was now the tallest built building downtown. He wasn't even right. I thought this had to be top TV news, but Hillary stumbled getting into an SUV, and in the week of pneumonia coverage that followed Trump's self-promotion on America's darkest day, disappeared. I am a sports nut, and there is no way to distinguish sportscasters from two TV newscasters today. They both promote the game. If the two worst NFL teams are playing on a Thursday night matchup, it is described as a clash of titans. We all have long understood that ratings are a driving force in TV. We did not understand until now that ratings are all that matters. I always told my interns and the classes that I taught at Columbia, Hunter, and LIU that we are the truth tellers. We're the only profession paid to tell the truth. Doctors tell the truth, but they're not paid to. Lawyers occasionally tell the truth, but they're not paid to. We are paid to find and tell the truth. We are the most honest profession, but I can't say it anymore. How many millions would networks lose if Clinton was up by 10? If the coverage coincides with the need to keep it close, are we to assume that's a coincidence? The related but other part of the rationale for coverage that defies truth is audience satisfaction. Howie Kurtz, the media reporter at Fox, has taken to critiquing anti-Trump coverage that makes it onto other networks as alienating half of its audience. Give them what they want is now the underpinning to the TV narrative. when Mac was in elementary school, I was asked to speak at his school about what reporters do. And I brought my notebook, and I had it in the pocket of my trench coat, and these were 5th and 6th graders, and it was an auditorium filled with them. And I said, "We are detectives for the people." Now, TV journalists, instead of seeing themselves as detectives for the people, want to be reflections of what the people want. And if half of them want Trump, then they've at least, regardless of the facts, have to give that half what they want. The culmination of this drive to the bottom are these debates. It's not just Chris Wallace and Fox and Trump who are demanding no fact-checking and no follow-ups. It's the Commission on Presidential Debates itself. If journalists are not allowed to be journalists, they shouldn't play one on the greatest national stage in history. In the NBA and in Major League Baseball, the teams have their own channels now. And they pick the sportscasters, and everyone understands they are partisans. Let Chelsea and Ivanka moderate the debates. No journalist should participate in a sham where journalists are required to become passive observers. America made its deal. America made its deal with television decades ago. We gave them the public airways for free. It's $1 trillion subsidy. We were supposed to get back some public service programming, primarily in the form of real news coverage. Now it's just another profit center inside each network where ratings overrule journalism. In 2014, they let a ratings-driven Ebola scare deliver the Senate to the Republicans, and as soon as the election was over, Ebola disappeared. We are gripped by another ratings-driven fever today. But this time, just like the ratings-driven shock and awe of Iraq, we will live with its consequences forever. It's time, after this election, for all of us to rise up against the commercialism of broadcast news and force the FCC to change it. Thank you so much for this award.
Take that hat. Hey, Wayne, give me that hat. We're done with that hat.
Just a few more minutes of your time. Thank you to Wayne. Want to remind folks that this is a difficult segue after the thrust of Wayne's speech, but we're going to have some TV news on screen in a few minutes for those who want to watch the debate with us. But first, I just want to take a minute to thank the members of City Limits Board of Trustees who are here. Excuse me, one more second. Sorry, wait, stop talking. I get very sensitive. I start crying. It's not, you don't want to see it. So everyone, just 2 more minutes, I promise. Members of the benefit committee, if you are on our benefit committee, raise your hand. Or if you wanted to be and want to pretend, raise your hand. Yay, benefit committee. Thank you so much for being part of this amazing event, making it possible. Our board members who are here, you met Mark Edmiston, Dan Rubin is also here, Jeff Macklin, and David Jones from CSS. CSS is part of the reason, maybe the chief reason, that City Limits is still here today because of their custody of us for 5 years. So thank you to CSS. Now let me bring up two of our board members who also served as Gala co-chairs, Elizabeth Cook-Levy and Andrew Breslaw. They are were the pilots of this. They were the heart and the passion behind it. They have a few closing words. I just want to take one more personal point. If I can have your attention for one more second. So I turned 40 this year, just days before City Limits. And so I feel like I can talk about what it means to be 40 and what it doesn't. Being 40 means that you're a little wiser, not quite as dumb as you were before. Maybe you're a little better at your job. It certainly means your job is not done. And I just want to make the point that we've talked a lot about the past of City Limits tonight. It should be obvious to everyone that the stories that we're talking about in New York today, income inequality, the housing crisis, police injustice, these are the stories City Limits has covered since literally the day I was born. And if you are here tonight, even if you've never read or heard of City Limits before you walked in the door, you're here because you believe in the same things we do, and we need your support to provide the kind of coverage Wayne is talking about. So please become readers, sharers of stories, tipsters, but also especially members and donors. Help us make the next 10 years as much of a success as the previous 40. And thanks so much for coming. Now I will turn it over to my Gala co-chairs, Andy and Elizabeth.
Let us all raise our glasses, and we'll be taking 3 sips. The first one, Elizabeth.
The first toast? It's my real pleasure that the first toast this evening is to Henry Garrido. 40 years ago, when City Limits was founded, I was a full-time paid staff member of DC 37, right around the corner at 125 Barclay Street. So it's a real pleasure. Thank you, Henry. We, as New Yorkers and the municipal workforce, are particularly proud to have you as one of our leaders. You provide such knowledgeable, passionate leadership for your members with great integrity and energy. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Let us now raise our glass to a man whose repertorial accomplishments are simply immense, whose unquenchable outrage at injustice and passionate love of our city and commitment to the principles of accountability and transparency have been an example to so many people in this room. I also, on behalf of Michelle and I, want to add a special personal note, because without his reporting one of his stupider theories and conspiracy theories, it wouldn't have forced a certain press secretary, for at the time Ruth Messenger, and a certain lobbyist, for a developer who will remain unnamed, to have to collaborate very closely, learn to flirt, fall in love, and be together for 20 years. So to Wayne Barrett, reporter extraordinaire, mentor to so many, and matchmaker, thank you. Cheers. And lastly, our final sip to City Limits. Here, here.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Now you can talk. There.